Hey everybody, welcome to another amazing episode of the Lead Like a Boss podcast. We have an amazing guest today. They're always amazing. I say that every time. I know, but it's okay. This one is for sure. James Hutchinson has been helping small and medium-sized businesses with their IT services for 25 years. And I can tell you he has learned a lot of things when it comes to not just the IT, but when it comes to business. James, welcome to the Lead Like a Boss podcast.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
Wow.
Proud to be here.
Yeah, it's been a while. We've been trying to do this for a while, and I'm so glad to have you.
You're a pretty prolific networker. We see you everywhere, serial networker, and we got to get together. So I'm glad it worked out.
It's interesting you say that. We were at that networking event earlier today, and the question went around about, sales techniques, sales tips. What kind of sales tips do you have?
What do you recommend?
And I'll tell you, networking and investing in people, investing in relationships.
Yeah.
There's no hack for that. There's no getting around it.
I agree. Similar to what he said today about how referrals are literally the number one way to get new business. I agree with that totally, is the networking, right? We've all got one of these things that has, 1,000+ people in it. It's not necessarily who you're talking to, but all the contacts they have in their phone that they're not going to think about these people until you sit with them and have a coffee and talk, and then you really get to know you and oh, you know what? And they'll have 2 or 3 people almost every time. It's been my experience.
And there's no trick to it.
No.
You just got to invest the time.
Spend the time.
Yeah, you've got to do it. I mean, all the hacks and the AIs and the CRMs and the automation, that's all great.
There's only so much.
But if at the end of the day, if someone gets your email and don't know who the hang you are.
Agreed. They're not going to listen to you. Yeah. It's funny, we were talking about a networking event and how do you, like them and what do you do? And I never talk about my business, ever. I sit and it's all about the interpersonal. It's all about the getting to know and the skiing and what do you do? And, you look like you're in shape and, And then at a certain point you see them and they stop and they go, what do you do anyway? Right? And then it's I feel like it's like that hook in the mouth. It's now I got them. Now they're actually going to pay attention.
Bingo.
And that's when I go into
because they want to.
Yeah. Now I think I like this guy. I'm going to ask him a question. I care now.
Bingo.
Whereas they wouldn't listen to you before, probably. Everybody's got their little elevator speech. Nobody cares. Honestly.
Yeah. 100%. So now that we got that out of our system, let's dive into the podcast. What I wanted to ask you right off the bat is 25 years. You're celebrating 25 years. You started the Infotech Montreal in 2000. An amazing time for IT companies. Obviously, it was crazy in those days. A lot of entrepreneurs, they get into the game because they're scratching an itch that they have, meaning they have a problem that they can't find an easy solution for in the marketplace, and so they go and start a company. What was your motivation for throwing your hat in the entrepreneurial ring?
Great question, honestly, because I did this work for 3 years before I started the business, working for some pretty big places. One of them got bought out by Bell, so that'll tell you how big and how well they were doing the job. And frequently when I was sent on sites, it was always the same kind of grocery list of things that had to be done, but for different people. And it was always at the same place. And in my mind, I was thinking, why don't we create a standard of whatever it is, standard of software, standard image of the computers that we can, just replace easily and quickly. And so I obviously brought this to my bosses and say, hey, how about we do, and the other thing was tracking information. So every time I'd go to a site, I had to ask people for passwords and such. And they're giving me grief because you guys should know this. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, what? We really should have a list of all that. I should show up knowing what I'm supposed to do and not having to ask the same questions every time. So that's kind of where it started. And I brought it back to the head office and I said, I think we should, great idea, James, let's implement this. You know how it is, right? Blah, blah. And yeah, it never transpired. And, they, believe it or not, they ran out of work for a junior guy like me.
Wow.
I was studying, I was writing exams left and right, just trying to get better at my job. And they actually let me go. And I was just like, you know what? Because a lot of the people that I was working for and with were like, if you ever go on your own, let us know. So I kind of took the leap, and I said, I can do this better than they were doing, which is bold. There was many techs in that company, but also at a better price, and at least start with a few people that know they needed this type. So it started there, and it was just a way that I worked that I think caught on. People liked it,
How old were you, James?
Oh boy, I don't want to date myself, but I would have been 30-something. It was pretty young. It was my second business, believe it or not.
Okay.
I had started another one doing paper recycling, and we actually implemented a netware network back then. If anybody knows that word, netware. But that got me interested. I really loved what we did. We hired someone to install the network, and I thought, wow, this is cool. If ever, something goes sideways, maybe I'll start
Were
a
you
new
always
career.
technically inclined?
Not necessarily, but I had a dad that was super handy. One of those
Okay.
guys that could fix anything. So I always had that where I wanted to learn how to do that and fix anything and just grab stuff.
So you weren't
and
afraid to break things apart?
break things and then put them back together. Yeah,
Okay.
that was the thing. Frequently, I had a bucket of bolts left over that I didn't know where it went. But
They didn't need these parts anyways.
No, did we really need that? No, I was never shy.
So that's a great mindset. For me, when I hear that, I just hear an appetite for risk. You're willing to manage risk.
Yeah.
You feel that, well, what's the worst thing that can happen, and you move on. That's a very common trait that we see amongst entrepreneurs. So, what were the lessons that you learned in your previous business that helped you with the new one?
Ooh, that's another good question. I think the business acumen, because there was a lot of people at the time that I did the recycling business that were doing that, and much bigger companies than I had. So it was making the relationships with the customers, making sure they could count on you. The do what you say and say what you do, kind of thing. That I think was important. Really putting in the work. You can't fake it when you're this fake it till you make it. It doesn't really work well as an entrepreneur doing those type of things. But you wear so many hats, right? So I was doing the accounting and I was doing the other stuff, and I did learn a lot of things. But I would say those two are probably the most important.
Cool. I think you should come up a little bit because the mic might be having a hard time picking you up because you got a soft voice.
Good catch. Yeah. I
might
try not to bellow.
That's okay. Now, all right. So let's keep going here. So the business acumen, understanding the other aspects of business. What do you say to other aspiring technically oriented people? Let's say, I don't know, let's say you're a bookkeeping tech, or let's say you're some kind of a service person, and you're a technical person, and you're out there on your own, you're in your truck, and you're making service calls, and you're one-man show, or maybe a 2 or 3 man show. What do you say to those people? What advice would you give to those people when it comes to business acumen?
Well, that's a really good question again. One of the things I learned was know what you don't know, and delegate, give away all the rest, honestly. Because there's just so many things we all try to do that I'm pretty sure I can do this, and anybody can do this, and and I've said that a few times. If James can figure out how to do bookkeeping, anybody can do it. And this is what I'm trying to hire a bookkeeper. It's like, well, that's probably not the right thing to say, but yeah, because you wear, as we said before, so many hats. So I think it would be figure out what it is you're good at and stick with that. Stay in your lane and give away the rest of the stuff, which is almost impossible when you're starting out. But that delegation of all those little things that you're not good at, and you've identified, I'm really not good at that. Listen to mentors, listen to people that have come before you that know what they're doing. That's hard too. But every time I've listened to someone that's more senior or I feel is doing better than I am, always pays off.
What is it about entrepreneurs? And I know it's part of the grit and the tenacity and the obstinance of being an entrepreneur. If you aren't all those things, you will not survive as an entrepreneur.
Agreed.
That whole expression, if I don't do it myself, it won't get done right.
That's tough.
I know we had a conversation about this and we were talking about it. When it's your baby, when the business is your baby,
Yeah, it's tough to let go.
Yeah. How would you encourage, let's say you were mentoring a young entrepreneur and they had that mindset. What would you say to them to help them break that or break it down?
I think what I've learned over the years, finally delegating stuff, would be that there's a small percentage of people that are going to squawk about the fact that James isn't there doing the actual work, which you deal with yourself. You handhold those ones and you bring them back into the fold and you make them feel comfortable again. Show them that the others in the team that have been given these jobs are just as competent and that they're trained and they're led by you. I think that helps, you know, because when I say those things, it's like, well, who do you think they're calling when they get on the phone? You know, like, so we're still there. I'm still there. It's not like I'm not doing the jobs anymore or guiding the new techs, but I think it would be that. It would be, I'm getting off the topic now in my mind, but is to, yeah, I lost the topic.
Do you think smaller businesses, younger entrepreneurs, do you think they put enough emphasis on training when it comes to the people that they're bringing on to their teams?
That's where we were, yeah, where we're saying, you know, I'm delegating and now there's other people doing the jobs. What would you tell them? Yeah, it would be exactly that you know, that small percentage, take them, hold them by the hand, let them see that you're still involved, let them see that you're still there, but trust your guys and give them the space to fail and the space to ask questions and the space to you know, because they're gonna hit the wall sometimes.
Yeah.
But you got to give them that space and trust them, you know. I want to say it's Musk. It wasn't Musk. It would have been Virgin.
Mm-hmm. Brantford.
Brantford, yeah. So Branson says, you know, treat your staff well, treat your employees well, and they're going to treat your customers well.
Yep.
And I really, really believe that because I see them and I hear them saying things that I would have said and did. And I just thought, wow, you know, like some of it does come across and they pick it up, but I didn't tell them to say those things. They just feel that, you know.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky with picking who I picked, I think, because they all kind of have that same customer service focus. So, yeah, you got to trust that they're going to do it. It's tough. It's very tough. Letting go of your baby.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I think a lot of young entrepreneurs or newer entrepreneurs, or regardless of their age, if they haven't been in the game a long time, they lack the training to train.
Agreed.
You know, you need to learn how to train people, and if you want to de-risk that customer service aspect of your business, you better train your people to deliver the way you want, you know, service to be done.
There's a lot of work there, I find, honestly, like because I remember frequently training the first couple of staff, showing them the things that I wanted, and it's not necessarily I'm the boss and do it the way I want. It's I've discovered this works well. The customers like it. When you completely take a picture of their desktop and put all the icons back the way they were, they just love that stuff. This is why we're different. Nobody else kind of does that or cares about that. When they type an email and those names pop out, it wasn't always automatic. You had to move that from computer to computer. There were things that I had to show them consistently that, you know, this is why this matters because look at how happy they were. And, you know, and it's that, you know, oh, every time I get a new machine, there's this wrong and that wrong. And, you know, it's a huge thing in our industry, and I don't want people going through that. So I was telling my guys how to do that, and I think, you know, they would say a little bit different how I explained it to them than I would, of course.
But you hit on an amazing topic in the sense you used the word consistency, and I think that human beings hate surprises in general.
Agreed.
Especially business people.
Agreed.
They like to know what they're going to get, and then when the job is done, they like what they were sold they were going to get, and what they actually get to be the same thing.
Agreed, or better.
Or
if this machine's better, right? It's got all the icons where it's supposed to be, but now it's faster, and it, you know, and that was the experience I feel like I used to give, you know, and so training someone to do that, there's a lot involved with all the little details. There's probably 100 details in that checklist, you know, before we say, we're done, you know.
Now, you've got a promising tech in your team coming along, and they flub up.
Yeah.
Like you said, they hit a wall. They screw up.
Yeah.
What do you do as a leader? What do you do?
You got to cop to the mistakes. I've learned that frequently, I should say, and it's a huge thing to discover and learn and implement. we screwed up, and this is how we think we screwed up, and what can we do to fix it? Sometimes you're told exactly what you need to do to fix it, but usually,
And hopefully it's not get out.
yeah, and because you're not going to lose a customer over one machine that some issue happened, some guy screwed up. You're not going to, but it's always in the back of your mind, like, oh God, if this keeps happening, you're going to lose a customer, right? So as the entrepreneur, and especially when I was the one-man show, like, you can't lose customers, so yeah, it's cop to what happened. Here's why it happened. This is what we're going to do to avoid it in the future. The junior has been shown by a senior. Is there anything else we can do for you?
Right.
That's kind of what I do.
I love that. I mean, the expression "cop to it," right, is another word for take responsibility.
Agreed.
for what happened. And I think a lot of times in the industry or in business in general, a leader will tend to get parental, right, and defend the employee
Frequently.
and that can create. I mean, I don't remember what the book was, but this whole idea that the customer isn't always right, and
I agree.
defend your employees and stand up for your employees. I mean, yes, of course. If a customer is being abusive and overstepping, of course it's the leader's job to stand up and defend their employee, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's a given. But let's be honest, how often does that really happen? I mean,
it's a valid point, because that's happened a few times where my guys have given me flack, and I deserved it, where I was defending the customer too often, and they actually did all their due diligence, they did their work, they have a paper trail to show that the customer wasn't right. He was a bit of a jerk to them, and he was, a little bit. So it's not always the customer's right, for sure. And it's very difficult, that line, skating that line between I want to keep my customer, but I want to defend my guys. Very difficult. So I typically collect as much info as I can first and try to get a picture of the situation. And yes, sometimes it is the customer being a bit of a jerk, and you got to set them straight on how you need to deal with us, and how, we give you a service in a timely fashion. First of all, pay us, and second of all,
it's always nice.
You're right.
It's always nice.
Yeah, because chasing people for 3 months is no fun. But it's also, give us a bit of a break. We will make mistakes, for sure. This is complicated, and he's been shown the right path, and it won't happen again.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is managing expectations.
Yes.
And making the client understand. I think you you said something a little earlier about delivering more than what they expected.
If you can, yeah.
And that reminds me of that expression. You under promise and over deliver, and that's all about managing expectations. So that's a great way.
Expectations are huge. I've discovered that too. Is what they think is going to happen versus what really happens, or what the reality of, it's not realistic to think X, Y, Z, but if you look at it this way, so yeah, expectations are huge. And that's the thing, is they don't know. I think we said this in our last chat, was, between us and mechanics, we're some of the few people that nobody can follow. They don't know what we're talking about or what we're doing. So they get nervous. And so having a clearer picture, this is what's going to happen. We make, pictograms, we make all kinds of things, show them this is what's going to transpire. It helps them a lot.
Yeah, and I think the confidence thing that you were talking about earlier, when people know what's going to happen, and you deliver the way you said you were going to deliver, over and over and over, that's what creates the confidence. So that when you tell them something new, they're saying, okay, well, if James said it's going to, James said it's going to happen that way, it's probably going to happen that way.
I feel like we've almost got too much power when it comes to that. They just, whatever you say, we'll listen to you. So it's a good thing, a good problem to have.
Yeah, but again, it's to your point earlier. It means that what's that Spider-Man thing with great? I know it's not Spider-Man. I know it comes from, I can't remember which philosopher said it, but with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Agreed.
I know it was probably Aristotle or somebody like that. It wasn't Spider-Man.
Definitely wasn't Spider-Man.
It wasn't Spider-Man.
He had a spidey sense thing that I have,
Yeah.
Always listen to your intuition.
I think
Spidey
Stanley
sense,
co-opted that quote, but we'll get into that another time. Okay, Phil, let's switch gears a little bit. I mean, in the time that you've been doing this, what would you say has been the mindset that has served you the most in being able to make Infotech successful?
The mindset. Well, I mean, I'm a bit of a bit of a, what's the word? I think of those, from Jurassic Park, those little dinosaurs, those pteroraptors, those
yeah,
nasty
yeah.
little things
Oh,
that
yeah.
don't quit.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I like that as an analogy because
Tenacity.
I can't quit, and so to a fault sometimes where you're working on something, you need to step away, you need to, so tenacity really, it's boils down to that. I'm not giving up. I'm not saying no. There's no reason. It's served me well over the years.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, I don't think I've ever talked to an entrepreneur that didn't have tenacity. How many times did you pivot in your business in terms of you had a strategy or you thought this was going to be the next thing since sliced bread and you had to pivot?
A couple of times, yeah. We made some modifications based on reaction, right? Based on what's happening out there. And this should have worked, and I don't know why it didn't, Or there's no way this should have worked. How did it work so well, So, yeah, I've seen both sides. But, it's the keep going, the getting up. And you know what really helped is that I didn't feel like this was a job, And everybody says that, right? Everybody says that. But I really felt that. I was just like, I can't believe, and I was like whispering, I can't believe people pay me to do this. I get to play with computers all day and fix shit, excuse my language, and they pay me for this, decent money.
Yeah.
This is not work to me. I love this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, if anything, when the administration stuff kind of started coming in, and now you got to deal with sales and you got to deal with the bookkeeping and all the other hats, I was kind of like, ugh, not as much fun as when I just got
Which
to be.
probably made delegating it a little easier, huh?
A little bit.
I can imagine.
Not as much fun as when I was doing everything myself, and it's kind of rewarding, right? To walk in and things are a mess, and you leave and everything's great. Thank you, sir. Who was that masked man?
I was going to say, you're kind of like the superhero. You swoop in, you solve all the problems, and then everyone's happy.
Yeah.
I love that. One thing that I heard when you were saying that was that loving what you do, right, and understanding that you love what you do is a big component. I recently listened or read something about how we tell young people, oh, do what you love. Do what you love. But if what you love, either you're not good at it or no one's going to pay you for it,
you're going to have trouble.
You might have a problem. How did you deal with the pricing issue? Because you talked about how when you left your company that you were working for and you went on your own, you were able to offer your clients similar services at a lower price. And we know that that's great when you got no overhead, but when the overhead starts piling on, you've got to change your pricing model. How did you manage that? Because a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with that.
It was tough, to be honest. We had hired a firm that specifically markets to MSPs, IT firms, and one of the first things they said is you need to raise your rates. And this is across the board. It wasn't specifically Infotech, but yeah, you could be and should be making way more. And the reason is that there is the brick and mortar to support. There is the training. There is you want qualified guys that know what they're doing. You got to pay these guys, So. That was a tough one, raising the rates. And I think our first raise was ridiculous, like 25, 30%. It was ridiculous. And I was so nervous. I thought, oh, my God. And we sent out this email, and we planned it and revamped it and red pen, and we fixed. Oh, my God, it took
Operator
so long.
standing by for the feedback, for the frack that's going to happen.
And I prepared this email blast and send it off, and I'm biting my nails. And
crickets.
We had 3 people go, what are you talking about? How can you raise this much? Which, I dealt with obviously right away. But the majority didn't say a word.
Why do you think that was the case?
I guess everybody's raising their rates. I guess people are always seemingly paying more. And I guess they liked our service. I think they liked what they got. They felt the value for what they were getting was there. I to be honest, I'm still not sure.
You think they were feeling guilty that they were ripping you off all that previous time because they knew what the rates in the market really were?
I never actually thought of that, but yeah, maybe they were laughing like, oh, you finally caught up the kid,
Yeah.
It could be, because they were getting a very good service for a very good price. Because the reality is that if I was doing what I was doing because it wasn't being done at the other place, right? Now all of a sudden you're doing that value add for that price, right? So yeah, if I thought twice, that was a good one. Yeah, I wish I'd thought of that 15 years ago. they were all laughing at me, going, "Oh, poor kid, he finally figured it out."
One of the things that I talk to a lot, especially with my newer entrepreneur clients, is I tell them, do a market study. And they, I don't have the money for a market study. A market study is get on the freaking phone,
Call people,
and
ask
call people
questions.
and ask them what their rates are.
Yeah.
Or if you're afraid of getting found out, ask
Pretend
buddies
you
to
want
do
to
it.
hire them, and
Ask
and
your
see.
friends and family to call up and get a price and get a quote.
Yeah.
But understand the market,
Yeah.
what people are paying out there for your service, and charge accordingly, and over deliver.
Yeah, you know what? I would say that would be a good lesson to these entrepreneurs. This is exactly what we're talking about, right? Trying to help them coming up. That would be the thing. Figure out your value, where you fit in. Because had I known that, where I fit in compared to the rest, maybe I would have charged. But you're also very hungry in the beginning, right? Like you want to take anything, and eventually you're kind of like, okay, no, it's like this, or go somewhere else.
I mean, I get the whole paying your dues thing. I do believe that entrepreneurs starting out, they do need to pay their dues. I do understand that. But being 15% below average market price is okay. Being half of average market price is dangerous.
Yeah, fair.
I mean, dangerous in the sense that you won't ever have enough profit to expand and to hire and outsource and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And you might be turning away customers because customer looks at that price and says, "Oh, there's no way James is going to be able to survive at that price. I ain't going to hire him because in 6 months he might be out of business."
Yeah. No, good point.
So I think that's the pricing issue is so
Huge.
so huge, and I think a lot of people aren't understanding it. And okay, so I'm going to ask you this question. Certainly in 2000, people were outsourcing their IT services en masse. How did you compete with people offering your types of services from, let's say, low-cost countries, for example, where they could easily undercut you?
I don't feel like that was a thing at the time.
Okay.
That wasn't a big thing. You might have had this in phone support for some of the bigger players, HP, Lenovo, whatever. But even then, that wasn't popular back then. There was people that were paid to be sitting there doing this, and a lot of that wasn't outsourced back then. But also, like, margins were hugely different, right? Like getting 30% markup on a machine. If we get 5% now, I'd be happy. A lot of the time, we're maybe sacrificing a bit in hardware and software profit because we know we're going to have the professional services to add on. But back then, it was a lot of people were making a lot of money doing this stuff. The only thing was that if you're going to support all of that you're selling, you got to have a few guys kind of sitting around waiting for the support calls, which is where the bigger companies that's where I worked. That's where I started. And there was a whole division of people just sitting there twiddling their thumbs waiting for
the
calls.
Yeah.
Right? So you're getting a full service shop and you're paying maybe quite a bit more than you would with James and entry level Infotech, but you also don't have all this overhead and all this thing. So I would say that that's a thing, right? That's a big thing. It wasn't back then, but
So let's switch gears. You're starting out and you got to get sales. So what was the technique that you used? What did you do to get sales in the early days?
It's so funny because I used some of these techniques in the recycling business, and they kind of worked in the IT firm. But my thoughts were just getting it out, getting the name out there at all. How am I going to do this? Today, I guess they call it that shotgun marketing, where you on the radio, in a newspaper, you're just shooting at everybody. Whereas now we can kind of focus in on our target niche. But we did what we call mail walks, where you're just blasting out a bunch of flyers. The flyers were really good. They had a good call to action. We put flyers in the little local rag for each town. There's always a little newspaper. We'd throw a flyer in there. I made it blue instead of white because that catch people's attention. Stupid stuff like this. It's funny if somebody. I appreciate if you guys go to our social, you'll see. But one of the last stories about our 25th anniversary kind of celebration was that we were honoring customers that have been with us since the beginning, and one of them called us because of one of these flyers, and it was so basic. It was computer problems ? Need help ? Call us. Phone number, French on the back, English on the front, and it was just thrown into like 10,000. And my thought was if I send it to some of the bigger places, some of the more affluent cities, Westmount, Hampstead, we all know where they are. these people, majority of them are business owners, and they're going to see this and go, oh yeah, I need a guy for my company. That was my thought. I ended up getting a bunch of residential calls. Can you, my kids broke my computer. So work was work. But yeah, the goal was that I was going to hopefully be getting businesses, and it did pay off. We got a few from that flyer, and I figured it would be a time bomb. They would take it and put it on their bulletin board, and when they needed an IT guy, I got this guy to call. I saw the flyer. So that's we use that. Mail walk, I think everybody knows. You give them to Canada Post, and they'll bring it to every single address. So some of them are not businesses.
Do you think those techniques? A lot of people, especially younger entrepreneurs, are just so focused on online, digital. Everything's digital now. Do you think there's a nostalgia for that kind of thing?
I think it can get traction, like a lot of people poo-poo that, phone marketing campaigns, email marketing campaign. The reality is they actually do work. It's a numbers game, right? You got to shoot it at 100,000 people, and if you get 0.5%, well, there are people that are calling you. Back in the day, we used to get 3 to 5%, which was huge, right?
Very.
One of my flyers that I sent out for paper recycling, we got 35% return. So every 1,000 we sent, 350 people were calling us to pick up their newspaper, their old waste paper. Like, holy cow, it's unheard of in marketing.
Yeah.
I think it still could have some traction. Another thing we did was I would actually walk in industrial parks door to door and give them a little flyer with my business card, and I wanted to meet the guy, and and they get to meet you and talk to you, and they're like, oh, maybe, But getting through the gatekeeper to get that flyer onto the right guy's desk, well, that was the challenge, right? I think somebody talked about today, doing phone cold calls. Holy cow. I did that as well, where you're just going through the directory A to Z, and you're just finding businesses. And at a certain point, the cities were offering their industrial park mailing lists. Mm-hmm. They had all the names there, mm-hmm. and you could just do stuff. You could just mail to them. You could just call them all. Wow.
You said something earlier. I remember reading something where the person said, you know what, that whole, putting stuff in the mailbox, that doesn't work. I did 500 and I didn't get any calls. Yeah. And the person said, 500 a day?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, what's the 500
frequency? 500 a half an hour?
What's the frequency?
And no, I printed these beautiful flyers, 500 that I didn't get one single call. And it's like, understand the numbers.
It's numbers and consistency. Yeah. To keep doing it, to keep getting it out there. And that was one means by which you're trying to get your name out, but then there needed to be others, right? They had to hear your name somewhere else. They had to see an ad in the Gazette. There was a bunch of things. We know today, right? What is it, 15 touch points before they call you or something? Back then it was probably 2 or 3, or, it needed to be, the timing needed to be right, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they put this on their bulletin board and they call you but it's, referrals obviously were, so that was huge for us. And so we started a referral campaign, right? If every one of you customers that you like our work, if you give us a name, it just has to be a name, we'll give you an hour free.
Yeah.
Why not?
Why not? And I love what you were saying before about recognizing customers. You're recognizing, customers that have been loyal to you or whatever. I think people underestimate the value of that kind of thing.
I think so. One of the things that I really appreciate and understand is the lifetime value of a customer, right? So, in marketing, like, how much are you willing to spend to get a customer? Well, for Infotech, our lifetime value is huge. We could spend a lot of money. So yeah, it was tough. This is a good problem to have, I think, to have a difficulty finding, your 5 oldest loyal customers. There was more than 5. I don't want to leave anybody out, but
I remember. Okay, let's talk about money. You're starting out. You don't have unlimited resources. I get that you had a business before. I don't know how it ended up or whatever, but for those people who maybe have a tight budget, what techniques would you suggest for them to use to be able to do the advertising? Because we all know that if you don't advertise, you might as well just close up shop and go get a job. Today advertising is crucial. Yeah. Regardless of how you do it, you've got to advertise. Yeah. So when someone doesn't have a budget or has a very tight budget, what advice would you have for them?
honestly, it's really tough to say because we never had a budget. So everything we did was kind of figuring it out as we went. I would say what money you do have, put it towards the proper tools, right? So the first thing came to mind when you're talking about it's not related to sales and marketing, but it's similar in the sense that we were doing everything by hand in the beginning. You know, I would track my time, I'd write it down, they'd sign a paper, we'd bill them because of that, you know. So we invested in software, but late, in my opinion, you know, far down the road, that tracks all the time and tracks everything. And now there's no, you know, and it looks more professional, of course. So I would say whatever budget you can find, you have to find something for sure. Invest in the tools, and then the same thing for marketing in that invest in the things we know works, right?
Yeah.
There are some organic things we know work well, you know, Google search words, maybe getting people to be doing a blog for you and talking about things you do that you're doing anyway, which should be relatively simple for the boss or the owner to write about, and then tag those keywords, make sure people are coming in from those keywords, and then we know Google AdWords, they work, you know, they cost, but they work, so you pick things that work with the small budget. Be ready to kind of move fast, because when it takes off, you don't, you know, this is, I think, a fear of a lot of people, you know, is what happens if it works? Well, you're going to be successful, right? But yeah, but
Are you ready for it?
Are you ready for it? Yeah.
I think this goes back to what we were saying before about your price strategy. You know, I think a lot of younger entrepreneurs, they're afraid of putting in the cost of acquisition, you know, the CAC, the cost of acquiring a customer. They're afraid of putting that in their pricing because they think it's going to push them over the top. And I think the statistics are clear that, you know, regardless of how well you do in your role, whatever service you're providing to the marketplace, there's going to be attrition. You're going to lose customers. And if you don't have that built into your pricing, if you don't have a means to go get another customer, you're screwed. There's just no, and like we were saying before, your clients know that too. The buyers know that James's price is so freaking low that, you know, any day now James could go under. So I'm going to decide, I'm going to use him until he goes under and then find another James, or am I going to say, I don't want to take that risk. I want to go with a more established company that has the proper price, and I know that they'll have enough money to go find another tech, to get more clients, to support the business, et cetera, et cetera.
A lot of them had faith in the beginning, right? And this is kind of part of why we honored some of them. You know, they took a chance on me, and thank God. You know, thank you. Yeah. You know, here we are, 25 years later. They're still there. So yeah, you needed to have patience. You needed to have faith. But investing in the right tools and the right strategies that are gonna, and then like you say, how are you gonna afford all that unless you're charging kind of what you're worth? So.
Yeah, I think I think it goes also to what you said before. Your early clients are your best investors, and taking care of them is so important. But it has to be a two-way street. Yeah, you're taking care of them, but they have to take care of you. Yeah, you know, meaning like, are they giving you referrals? Are they hitting you up on social media? Are they giving you testimonials? Are they, you know, those are the kinds of things those are the kind of clients that you want to look for. Yeah. And I think if you're giving above average service, it's not too much to ask. Yeah. And I think most customers who are happy with the service are also happy to do that.
They are. Yeah,
but why is it that people don't ask, James?
Because it's difficult. We don't want to do it, so we don't want to ask people to do it. I think that's one of the things. But believe it or not, I know people are going to...
That's a big one.
Right? Is that you got to make it simple for them, right? So the email has to be, here's the link, and go to... Like, you almost got to take them by the hand. I mean, I believe it or not, people are going to squawk at this, I'm sure, but I was paying my guys to ask for referrals and ask for reviews, rather. Like, literally, did you like what I just did? Are you happy with the service? Can you please go? Here's the link. Go click. Can you give us a review? And they'd go to Google and they'd do it. So, because we had a goal at one point where we got to get 100 by the end of the year. I don't even think we're still at 100 a couple of years later. But the point would being that people were actually going and they were doing it. And I'm not saying give us a 5-star. I'm not giving them grief if they don't. But the point of at least asking and making it simple for them, people are scared, I don't know. Like, what if they give me a bad review?
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
We aren't doing it
Yeah.
for our suppliers, because
Yeah.
we all have suppliers.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's got a supplier, whether it's the grocery
Yeah.
store down the street or the dry cleaner or the person that fixes
true.
your car. We all have
Yeah.
suppliers.
Somebody we use.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're not doing it.
Yeah.
So if we're not doing it, we feel guilty.
I
to
think
ask.
so. I think so. But by the same token, I would do it if it was made easy for me, right? They actually asked. They made a link right to their site. Do I have to go searching for them? And you're not going to do it.
My God, James, if I had a dime for every time someone, I had to teach someone where to find the link for the Google My Business. They don't even know where they are.
But this is the thing, right? We're all facing the same stuff, so make it simple for them, and But I think they're scared of what if I get a bad review, maybe.
Yeah.
But
so what?
My thing, I say it all the time, is you don't ask, you don't get. Simple as that.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how many times you get just because you asked. Like,
I agree.
So I was actually paying my guys to ask for.
But especially if you're busting your hump.
Yeah.
As a young entrepreneur and trying to get out there. I mean, I remember when my mom and dad started their business, this is like, anyways, a long time ago. Black and white TV people. They were working like crazy, ridiculous hours. And I believe every single entrepreneur out there that is grinding it out is doing the same thing. Nothing has changed.
No.
I think that we just need to buck up and understand that there's a value to that, and people do believe it, and people honor it. So don't be afraid to ask.
No, you can't be afraid to ask, and sometimes you're surprised by the answers. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and even if they give you an answer that you don't like,
Yeah.
it's still good information.
Yeah. It made me think as you were asking those questions, also these surveys, right? So part of our software asks for survey. How was your experience? And if you're not checking those survey results and then following up on them, what is the use?
Why bother?
And I'll get an email from Ford after an oil change. How was it? It was terrible. Nobody ever called. I do it on purpose to see if somebody's going to call me. Even though it was fantastic service, they did everything they needed to do. Brought me coffee and donuts while I'm waiting. It was fantastic. But I'll say terrible just to see. Nobody's ever looking at these. So that's another thing we do beside is we'll actually go and look. And if you had a problem, I'm the one calling. Hey, I saw you gave us a 3 on 5 for your satisfaction of the work done. What happened?
Yeah.
Oh, it was a mistake. Or they tell the truth. The guy did this, and this, and didn't get back to me when he said he's going to. Perfect. This is good feedback that we can use.
Yeah.
I think those are important, and a lot of people don't check them.
Yeah, I think the lesson here, especially for the newer entrepreneur, is if you don't block out that time in your schedule to specifically do those things, at least until you have the means to hire someone to do those things, you're going to make your slog that much harder.
Agreed.
And longer.
Yeah, I can totally agree. I remember clearly thinking all the things I was going to give to my first admin assistant. I had this list, as long as my arm of all these things I wanted to do, because stuff I thought of, I just don't have the time. I don't have the cycles. I don't,
Yeah. So we talked about a pivotal moment in your career, when you flipped the switch between being an operator and being an owner.
Yeah.
Talk to the audience about what was going on in your head. Like, how did you graduate from being a tech that was working in the business? So, you were basically self-employed. You gave yourself a job. How did you make that transition from that to now I am the CEO, I am the founder, I am no longer a tech that's just, working in my own company. I'm this other thing.
Honestly, it was from the drive to get everything done, because I wasn't getting everything done. Yeah, I was doing the technical stuff, and at night I would do the sales stuff and send the quotes, and on weekends I'd install the new server, and so I was doing everything, but I couldn't do everything well, and I couldn't get it all done. I just couldn't get it all done. So it was that drive to, I gotta get these things done, and I can't do it by myself. Something's got to give, right? So I had to find someone to start doing the tech stuff, so I had more cycles to do the other stuff, and then it became like that, it became eventually like, okay, James, take yourself out of the mix for all the stuff that you shouldn't be doing, and give it to other people. So that was tough, to realize that, yeah, I'm choked. I can't do anymore.
How did you find the money to hire those people? Because it's a big hurdle that a lot of younger, and when I say younger, I don't mean young in age, but I mean just people who aren't mature. And how did you get to the point where you had enough money to do that?
You got to line yourself up so that you can kind of give your salary away. So the money I was, using to do my stuff, and maybe sometimes was overflow. Maybe sometimes the government wasn't getting everything they were due. There were ways that, you can cut corners, but yeah, you kind of got to give up something. You got to sacrifice, and the reality is that you don't have to really do it for that long before you start catching up, because
it pays off fast.
Well, at the beginning, I'm also a tech still, right? So this person I've hired to do stuff, so now he's giving me more cycles to do other things. So now I'm half doing tech, half doing admin. So in theory, there's 2 techs now doing work. So it doesn't take long before there is more money there to start paying for that person. But yeah, in the beginning, you kind of got to cut the corners and have craft dinner a few times a week before you.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, they're in the lifestyle game. They've got all the toys, they've got the fancy cars, they're spending a lot of money on extra stuff. And they're not understanding that you need to put that money away in order to be able to hire somebody for that $100,000 a year that will buy you the time, and make sure that when you put your plan in place, that you don't need to pay that. If that person can't earn their salary within 3 to 6 months, you did something wrong.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, you did something
that was my
wrong.
thought. Is that it was a gamble short term, that now there's going to be 2 of us billing, so in theory it shouldn't take too much longer, and because I'm able to do half the time doing the other stuff, now those cycles are going to pick up, and more sales will come in, and because now I can focus on more than one thing. So yeah, it's a gamble, and it's a bit of a what do they call that, when you fall back, that free fall thing where
a leap of faith.
There's a name for it, catch fall, something.
Yeah.
I don't know, something fall. But you're basically you're counting someone's going to catch you. So you gotta.
But I think the other thing, and I know you talked about your business acumen. I'm sure when you had to look at the books, you had to look at your revenue, you had to look at your profit margins, you had to look at your income statements, and understand that with this much money coming in, we've got X amount of runway to be able to pay a salary of XYZ, and we need to make XYZ sales in order to break even on that.
I'm not sure it was all that well planned out, if I was honest. It's kind of like,
okay, fake it. Just say,
work from the house. Work from the house to save the rent, and then you can pay the dude. And it wasn't quite. They were looking at numbers, but every time I looked at them, I was, oh God, I can't look at this. Let me get back to work.
But I think that's the beauty of being a technician in your business, because if you got to roll up your sleeves and do some late nights and do some weekends and so forth, that buys you some of that leeway. So,
and the working out of the house helps for sure. You can run down to the office anytime, and a lot of people have trouble with that. I didn't really have much of a choice, and believe it or not, we only took an office in 23. I ran out of space in my home to have another technician, so I had to get an office. But it's funny how some people think of it as cutting corners, others think of it as an advantage to.
Yeah, but you see, again, I'm hearing maybe one of the other values or the other attributes that made you a good entrepreneur is you don't need the flash. I think a lot of people out there, they need the flash.
Yeah,
they need to have the sign on the wall. They need to have the office. They need to have the fancy, furniture. And all that stuff.
Image does count for something, for sure. I think so. To your question about what would you invest in, we invested in a proper designer, and we redesigned our website. So, it took a while. Obviously, it was our 20th anniversary. But the point being that we paid professional to give us a new look and feel that when you come to our website, I mean, I'm going to toot my horn for a change. I would never do that.
It's all good.
It's professional. You look and you're like, holy cow. And there's the team is there, and it's like, boom, we're in your face. We spent on that, and it was a big investment, I think, because it was everything, right? It was the website itself. It was the text. We had to pay the copywriter. But we spent on that so that when you do come looking, even though we work from the house, they look pretty professional.
Yeah.
And then you get a list of my references, and you actually call the first few. And I was confident that it was going to look better than it did. But funny you say that, because it brought me to one customer over 25 years. Only one, not even a customer. excuse me, was a prospect. Did not hire us because we didn't have brick and mortar. We didn't have an office.
Wow.
Yeah. They were an investment firm, and you walked into the place, and old school, a heritage business, we'll call it, with a half an inch of dust everywhere, and you can tell they don't invest in their, they had a good reputation and such, but it was funny that they didn't want to take a chance on us because we didn't have an actual office. But I had all my tools and all my stuff on my laptop that I plugged into his conference room and showed him, look, I don't need an office to do all this stuff. If you want me to charge you double per hour, I'll go rent an office for you, but I don't need it.
How does that help you? How does having an office help you?
So go to the flash and you don't need all that stuff, but the tools and that's what I wanted to show him, is like, look, I have access to all my stuff, just because there's no tech room that you can walk into with a big 50-inch TV that has the monitoring flashing lights on it. If you want that, I can give you that.
We can do that with AI now.
Right? Make a fake background, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to me, it was I can do all that, but it'll cost you.
Speaking of AI, how has AI affected your business? And we can't have a conversation without bringing that up.
Without talking about it. If I was honest, I'd say I'm a little scared of it. My age group, a lot of us are, but a lot of my team are using it, and we've embraced the benefits of it, and we are using it as a tool as opposed to replacement. It's definitely not a replacement for things, but everything gets enhanced with it for sure. We've noticed that. So our meeting here, in theory, we could throw this into an AI engine and get out the important points and what we needed. So that helps us a lot for all the different meetings we do, all the tasks we need to do. We need to resume things. These are what you've been doing over the past 5 years. We need you to start doing these things. Here's how to incorporate it based on. So there's a lot of fun things like that. The public AI, which I'm sure you're aware, I don't know if the audience is, but the public AI versus the private, so the Microsoft product or the Google product that's kind of yours for your tenant, for your environment, versus the public, I would say be careful with that. Let's pay professionals to help you set up your private one, because when you're dumping all your personal information, your numbers, your HR stuff, I'd rather that be in your private tenant that nobody else sees, obviously, and you would too, as opposed to the public. There is a paid version of ChatGPT, let's be clear, but most people are using the free one. Don't go dumping all your private and important information into a public engine. Just don't do that.
I think when people do that, they kid themselves into thinking that it's, oh my God, there's billions of people, there's billions of bits of information, Yeah. Who's going to be looking for my stuff? Like, what's my stuff in the sea of stuff? Yeah. But I think they don't realize. I did this exercise with somebody. I said, really? I typed in ChatGPT, I typed in their business name, I typed in where they are, and I asked it, who is this company? And it found proposals that their salespeople were writing with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So your competitors are definitely checking.
They know you're out there, yeah. Well, that's the reality, right? And it used to be similar to the hacking question, which these things kind of fit together. You were right when you were saying that nobody cares about my little stuff. Nobody did back then, and it was the big players, and they had stuff. But the reality is that now most companies don't have that security, or don't implement it, or don't think it matters. So that's why you're a target now.
Yeah.
Because the big guys have figured it out. They've locked all those holes. They've turned all those keys. Now it's all the little guys that, there is a lot of information there, and they don't think it's important, so they don't protect it.
And they're using robots to do it. They're not. There's nobody behind a keyboard looking for James Hutchinson, IT, anything. Yeah. No, they're just robots, just looking for holes, just looking for something to exploit.
A lot of this stuff is automated, and a lot of the stuff that a lot of people don't know is that when you have a breach, typically that breach has been sitting waiting as a time bomb for anywhere from 3 months to a year ahead of time. It's been sitting in your network, waiting to explode.
Yeah.
It's prevention, one of the main things we do, we used to be what they call break fix. So something goes wrong, they call us emergency style, we got to rush, everybody's panicked, everybody's stressed. We do like to do the proactive approach. So we're putting things in place that are going to, hopefully prevent these things and hopefully advise us and alert us and all these things. Yes, they cost money, but what is your business worth? What is the business data worth? What is your time worth? A lot of people don't put value on their time. We do, right? So how much does it cost you to have your 50 employees sitting around doing nothing because the server got breached?
Yep.
Maybe move some of these items
or
from
your reputation.
Your reputation. Now you've just spammed all your suppliers with who knows what, and so all of these things are valid, and I don't want you to find this out and call me after the fact, because your purse strings are tight when I'm talking about these things, but as soon as it happens now, it's like, hey, how can you fix this?
Yeah,
I don't want that. I want the proactive approach, and they're targets. A lot of these companies are targets,
and sometimes all the money in the world won't make anything go faster.
No.
I mean, it's just not going to happen. And anyway, we can talk about all that, all the proactive things, but I think the bottom line is I think to those people out there who are listening who have businesses and have a lot of their business on computers, like so many of us do, having a professional come in and give you a plan, like a protection plan, is so important. I think it's worth its weight in gold.
I totally agree, and I want people to understand that we need to be in your top 5 contacts. You've got a banker, you've got a lawyer, you've got an accountant. You need to have an IT firm. You need to have an MSP. One-man shows are better than nothing, I will say, and no offense to the one-man shows out there, but you need a team of people that are paying attention to all these things. There's too many moving parts now.
Yeah.
There's too many legislations, and you're responsible now, especially if you're taking people's data. Why do you think Loi 25 became popular? Why do you think all these things?
Oh, and just wait. I mean, when we have the first major AI breach, the first major AI hack that happens, I mean, governments around the world are going to be like going freaking out and cracking down. Yeah. So I agree. I think that people need to be proactive about these things. And again, it goes to what we were saying earlier. Just because you're a small business doesn't mean you're not going to be targeted.
Agreed.
I mean, in fact, I think you made a very eloquent point. It is the small and mid-sized businesses now
the other way around
are
now.
being targeted.
You guys are the targets because you think you're taking it lightly and because you think you don't need to protect your stuff. Now you're easy targets.
Yeah. And forget about insurance. I know that insurance companies now are really, really cracking down on cybersecurity insurance.
So on top of these regulations where, you've got to respect people's data and that, yes, that's a huge thing because so many people are getting hacked and getting attacked and, compromised, ransomware, all this stuff. There is cyber insurance you can get, but it's costly. And there's 100 check boxes that you've got to do to make sure that you're compliant. Hopefully, most of that's already done by a respected professional IT firm, but that's what you need. You need, because it's a 25-page thing that these insurance companies give you.
And don't make a mistake with one.
You're not going to know how to read this, unfortunately. I hate to say.
Yeah.
Give it to one of us, and hopefully.
But
they
make you work on compliance on a regular basis.
Agreed.
So remember, I told you at the beginning we were going to have a special guest on the show. Let's see if I can pull this off. Let's just see.
Hey there, great to have you.
Can you suggest a good question for my guest, James Hutchinson?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. A thoughtful question for James Hutchinson. Exploring a defining leadership moment, you might want to ask Jake something along the lines of, James, could you share a defining moment, an experience that really shaped how you approach leadership today? This kind of question often opens up a rich and personal story, which can lead to some
that's enough. All right, so there's your question, straight from the lips of ChatGPT.
That's the special
digital
guest?
lips, yes.
What did she say again?
A moment that shaped your leadership style, like a moment where you stop, like when you realize I'm a leader now. I'm not just a worker in this company. I'm a leader. Like a defining moment where, something happened. So, everyone knows that BOSS stands for bravery, optimism, security, and sustainability. So when was a moment where you kind of had to pull up your socks in terms of, like, bravery and be a leader and do something, and you said afterwards, shit, I'm the boss now. I'm a leader. I'm not just, doing a job and taking care of customers.
I mean, there were a bunch of moments like that, but I think the most important, most defining one was, believe it or not, taking the office, which I talked about, a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Only a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
After 23 years, everybody's, after COVID, is going to the house, and we're going to the office. So, which, seems silly to say, because there was a bunch of defining events, hiring the first staff, getting a partner in the business who is the lion's share of the intelligence, taking over my position on many things. Those are all big moments, but yeah, moving into an actual office, and I really hate to say I'm almost embarrassed. I was just like, no, because like I felt like an adult. I felt I've got somewhere to go. Like I've got an office to drive to, and of course I drove the bus on decorating and get the designer that made our brand helped us. With
and you got a great office, by the way. I love the way you guys did it.
Thank you.
You put a lot of thought into making it a place that's inviting and it's warm. You've got the the slogans on the walls, and I know you live by them. I know they're not I know that they're just not there for decoration. And you went out of your way to make it a pleasant environment for
I think so, for the staff, for the customers to come into. My thought was that if I'm going to be spending on an office, I want to use it. I want to have a conference room that people will want to use. I want to have a little kitchen area people are going to sit and eat at, and we're going to create an office culture, and we're getting, I wanted to do all these things. Getting the designer involved to help, paying one of the customers a bunch of money for all the furniture that's in there. That's really nice stuff. I'm very, very proud of that place, and it's a 5-year lease, and we're on the hook for some money, but the image that we talked about that I never needed or wanted kind of came about. And when people walk out of the hall, 70s style older building from Olimbeck, no offense guys, they see into the new millennium in Infotech, they're like, holy cow, so I appreciate that, and I'm proud to go there, so
James, you're an inspiration to a lot of people in the sense that you did things very contrary to what we see a lot of young entrepreneurs doing today. I mean, you were willing to put the work in, you were willing to save, you were willing to invest in people, and then when all that was done, you worked on you invested in the quote unquote vanity stuff. I mean, I say quote unquote because I'm not saying that if you have an office that means you're being vain. I mean, if your business is generating enough revenue that you can justify and afford having an office, by all means. If you're taking money out of your investors' pockets to have a fancy office, or if you're taking money out of your line of credit to have a fancy office,
that's different.
That's different.
That's a nice way to look at it, because it's funny. I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about it, but we finally, after all this time, hit $1 million in sales. Holy cow! You better be doing something after 25 years,
Yeah.
But it's I think it's the slow, steady grind. Maybe during acquisitions and such, you can grow super quick, super fast, but I think we ground along and we did our thing, and we just grew slowly and sustainably, and we're a small staff, but we're tight, and the guys are very happy, and I feel like we've provided a good environment for them, and it's something to be proud of.
Absolutely. And you told me, as a small business, you said, well, rather than taking bigger risk and expanding, you made a joint venture. You made like a strategic alliance with another supplier or another in another city. And there's lots of ways for an entrepreneur to grow their business without taking on tons and tons of risk and tons of debt. But you got to be ready for it.
Agreed.
And you. Look, who's to say what's fast and what's not fast? I mean, tons of companies, they rocket to billions of dollars in like 26, 36 months, and then in the next 36 months they're out of business. I mean,
That's fair.
you've outlasted how many probably millions of companies that have come and gone since you started in 2000.
That's one thing I'll say is that a lot of these IT firms come and go, and I think I can count on one hand the ones that I would say go hire those guys, that are competent and do the job right and doing what we think is right towards the customers and such. It's something to be proud of. It's surprising. Short of the gray hair, you'd never know. You'd never know. It took so long, but it's been fun.
Bravery. I mean, you took the stab to jump out and do it on your own. You also showed a lot of bravery in realizing I can't do it all myself. If I'm gonna do this to my standard, I better get some help. I love that. Optimism. I mean, in your line, dude, I mean, the amount of competition that's out there. I mean, everybody who knows how to use a keyboard thinks that they're a tech. I mean, it's crazy.
That's part of the deal, right? Is that there's a lot of people that think they know what they're doing. But there's also a lot of work out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I don't need to be worried about competition, but they're not all doing it the way we're doing it.
Yeah. So, and the security, I mean, I know a lot of the people that are in your team have been with you for a long time. Yes. That's amazing. Yeah. A lot of your clients have been with you for like almost since the beginning.
Which a bunch of them,
so that speaks to your ability to sustain and continue to deliver on your promises, which is amazing. And of course, the fact that you've been, in the game for 25 years means you're a secure bet for not only your clients but for your investors and for, of course, your team. So
and anybody new that wants to join our team, we'll be expanding soon. So,
good thing. So where's the best place for people to find you as we wrap up?
You know what? LinkedIn. I'm in LinkedIn, obviously. Our website, infotechmontreal.com. All of our social. We're pretty much everywhere. I'm more of an email guy than a texting guy. I shouldn't probably say that, but
hey, whatever works. Whatever works.
Yeah, but what do I say? I say phone calls and emails are always free. Don't be shy.
Yeah. I love it. Well, James, listen. Thank you for being a boss leader. We really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing all these nuggets with us. I think welcome. A lot of people that are getting going in the leadership game will get a lot out of this. And
I hope so. I hope I brought value, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for having me.
And maybe in another 25 years we'll do this again.
Yes, sir. Hopefully retired by then.